Actually, I'll let us get started. The original lesson number 5 was I'm never resistant for the reason I think. So Dave's never resistant for why he thinks he's resistant. It's got nothing to do with it. And I'm still stuck on Damiana saying she's not in her 20s anymore. Oh my God. I must be older than I think. Anyway, back to the class. We're going to talk about resistance. We're going to talk about moving from resistance to another R word, the real world. The real world. The way we're going to approach the real world is look at a lot of the review lessons that we're currently going through if you're working the lessons from the beginning of the year. Specifically, in this case, it'll be lessons 50, 51 through 60. And so Jesus has pretty much laid down the basic metaphysics of the course, even though he didn't use the words very often, right mind, wrong mind, but the gist of it was he laid down the wrong mind. He laid down, us believing we're a victim of the world we see. He laid down the right mind. He laid down the Holy Spirit as our teacher and guide. And now he's reviewing all these thoughts, and he's doing it in a really succinct way. And every time, most of us, certainly Lynn and I, when we do these review lessons, we're always blown away about how they just really nail it on the head. What seemed like a lot of ambiguity going through the original lessons. Like, for example, lesson number 5, he tells us we're never upset for the reason that we think, but he never tells us why. And here in the review lesson, he doesn't even hold back. I mean, he's like laying it down. So if you look at page 83 in the workbook, paragraph number 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm never sad for the reason I think. I'm never, sick for the reason I think. I'm never resistant for the reason I think. If I'm in any of those ego kind of modes, there's a lot going on underneath the surface that I'm really not aware of, and I don't want to be aware of it. And he's going to explain what in this little paragraph, what's going on. He says, I'm never upset for the reason I think because I am constantly trying to justify my thoughts. And in this case, my attack thoughts, my separation from God. I want to hang on to separation. I want to really believe in it. I don't want to let it go. And I'm going to project that out onto the world. And when I do that, I'm going to have a lot of bad guys to point the finger at and say that it's not my fault. So I need to justify those internal separation thoughts, those thoughts of sin, guilt, and fear. In line 3, I'm constantly trying to make those thoughts true. I'm defending them by pretending I don't have a wrong mind, by pretending I really don't believe in separation, or I really do believe in separation, but I don't want to admit that's what I'm hanging on to. And I'm trying to justify all those thoughts and make them true by not looking at them, by being so caught up in the world and all the drama in the world that I don't see what's really going on, why I'm really upset, what I'm really hanging on to, and why I need to blame you for it. And so the next line, line 4, I make all things my enemies because I have to blame it on you, my lack of peace. My inner choice to believe in separation and hang on to that, I have to constantly find bad guys to blame it on. We don't usually call them enemies, even though if we're really honest about it on a good day, a good ego day, they really are enemies. I make all things my enemies so that my anger is justified and my attacks, my judgments, my finger pointing, they're all warranted. You're the reason I'm upset. You're the reason I don't have peace right now. It's got nothing to do, from the ego point of view, with this internal choice for separation. I have not realized how much I've misused everything I see by assigning this role of enemies to it. it's not just we got a few enemies. I mean, on a, you know, a normal day, there's a few people we don't like. Sometimes there's a lot, but he's saying we assign this role of enemies to everybody and everything. And it doesn't feel like that. And certainly we're not aware of that when we first open this book and start reading sentences like this. We don't have a clue what the hell he's talking about. But after a while, when you begin to get a picture of the metaphysics, we always use Ken's chart because it kind of lays it out in a linear fashion. What the real problem is always here in this internal choice in a place the Course calls the mind, not the brain, but the mind, where I can choose between one of two teachers. And if I choose the ego and I choose separation, I choose to believe in separation, I have to project that out and blame it on somebody or something. I have to have enemies. And that's what he's talking about here. I've misused everything and everyone I see by assigning the role of enemies to it. It's always something external that's robbing me of my peace. It just looks like I'm going through a normal day and I'm getting up, I'm brushing my teeth, and you know, I'm eating breakfast, I'm washing my face, my hands, etc. I'm getting in my car, I'm going to work. But what's really going on is I'm looking for enemies. In any given moment, I have to always be on the search for an enemy or enemies to blame my lack of peace on. Otherwise, I'm going to go back internally, maybe choose another teacher if I don't want to choose the ego as a teacher anymore, and I'll have a different experience of the way I see the world. And certainly where we're going with all this, the definition of the real world, the way the Course describes it, it's not like we go to a different place. It's not like a world where, like Disneyland, where there's lots of cool rides and everybody's happy and, you know, everybody's vegetarian and whatever your idea of paradise is, it's not that. The real world is simply looking at this world and realizing it's not real. It's kind of a misnomer in that sense. It's kind of ironic that he calls the real world is when we go back to the right mind, we connect with the Holy Spirit, and we look at all this seeming mess in the world, and we realize we made it up, that it's not real. We still see the images, but we don't take them so seriously. So that's what the real world is. It's not a place. It's not even a place in our mind. It's just an internal shift from one teacher to another so that we look at what we made up and realize I don't have to have enemies, that you're not my enemy, you're still my brother. And no matter what stories I make up about you, your true innocence and my true innocence is still intact. So, I mean, all that in a nutshell is what he's saying here on paragraph 5 on page 83. So line 6, I have done this, made everything and everybody in the world a potential enemy, if not an outright enemy. I've done this to defend an internal thought system, this choice for the ego, this internal choice to have separation, my belief in separation, to hang on to that thought, to hang on to that belief. So I'm defending the thought system of separation. The Course calls that the ego, that has hurt me. It's hurt me hanging on to that belief. And I no longer want to do it. I'd rather have another experience. If Jesus is telling me that I can actually look at all these messes in the world and look at the ego in this internal place called the mind and realize all that stuff is made up. The world's made up, and the ego that projected onto the world is made up. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm willing to let that go. I'm willing to have the Holy Spirit show me something else. And that's what he says in line 7. I'm willing to let it go. I'm willing to let this thought system go. So nail on the head, boom, boom, boom. This is, I mean, in that one paragraph, he's describing everything that we think we're doing and why we're hanging on to it. I need enemies, so I don't go inside and just let all this go. Any questions or thoughts or anything about any of that stuff?
I was just thinking about what a friend of mine had said one time. I thought it was pretty profound, but he just goes, I know what my problem is. He goes, I believe what I think.
That's good.
Yeah, and and it took me a while to get what he was talking about, but that's true because you know what, I can't always trust what I think.
Probably never, but
And,
that's all right.
right. Yeah.
I mean, you got to get through a day, but I wouldn't trust it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's real or not, and it is, and always, trying to find an enemy somewhere, it's not hard to find that. I don't have to look very hard.
Back in the old
So,
Roscoe days when I used to go to the foundation when I was in Roscoe, New York, I actually had a T-shirt made up saying the opposite of Descartes. I said, I think, therefore I'm not. And I was shocked at how many course students freaked out when they saw that. It's like, I thought they would like it. So anyway, yeah, I think, therefore I'm not is the gist of what the course is saying.
Were you putting Descartes before the course?
No.
And also in a similar vein, that our egos are like ocean creatures, right? Because they're always trying to see an enemy, right?
Hey Tim, can you make Bruce go away now?
I tried. I kept hitting the button, but it just I don't know. Jesus won't let him go.
Okay.
Lucian, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Very good. What part of the world are you in?
I'm in Seattle.
Ah, very good. Well, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Are you familiar with Ken Wapnick and his approach to the course?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Good. Very good. All right. Well, let's keep going then. Damiana, were you going to try to say something when I couldn't get Bruce to stop making puns?
I was, but it's kind of a silly example. I was coming home today and I had to stop by the mall, and this person just barely stole my parking spot, right in front of the store where I wanted to go. And I'm like, this is so silly, but I felt the irritation coming up. And then, the person took the spot and I went by and I had to turn round and round and round until I got one. And I was thinking how separate I feel from everyone if I can get irritated with that person, how I found someone to attack immediately. And
They're everywhere.
they're everywhere, but that felt so silly in a sense and so obvious and so in my face. But I realized it immediately, and I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good example. I make all things, everybody and everything my enemy. And if they're not an enemy right this second, they might be in the next second. They might rob me of my peace.
I wish I was as good as you. I had somebody do that. Well, they hit the top of my car and told me to back up.
Oh!
And I had a few choice words and got him the finger and all that. So it was
You didn't duke it out?
it was very, very spiritual. So it was. I felt like namaste, asshole. That dichotomy.
But did you say that?
I did not say that. I did call him the other word, but I didn't say namaste.
All right. I wanted to, first time he mentions, let me see if this is the case. No, not yet. In lesson 52, on page 84 in the workbook, and we're in paragraph 2 in lesson 52, I see only the past. And as I look about, because I need to have all these enemies, I condemn the world I look upon. I actually call this seeing. No, I don't call it searching for enemies. I just call it, I see the world as it is. And I hold the past against, once again, everyone and everything, making them all my enemies. When I had forgiven myself and remembered who I am, basically the second step of forgiveness, I will then bless everyone and everything, basically the third step of forgiveness. And let's see. I will bless everyone and everything I see, and there will be no past, and therefore no enemies. In other places in the text, he says, we don't really see even the people right in front of us. We just see shadow figures from the past. We see all of our victimizer scenarios, and they're rising up before us, and we're waiting to be victimized again if we're not being outright victimized like Chris and Damiano were. So, I mean, we're either waiting for the other shoe to drop or it's actually dropping. But the gist of it is I'm searching for enemies.
It
The
almost
real
seems like,
world, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it almost seems like the moment we wake up, if we're not mindful and let ego stuff come flooding in, it's almost like, unleash the hungry dogs of fear. We're constantly going out looking for some kind of scapegoat situation that we can project onto.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought you said the word licking for, not looking for, but licking, like hungry dogs were looking for something dead to bring back.
Maybe that too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that's good. So as an opening meditation, I always like to go back to part 2 in the workbook and find a meditation, a lesson that has something to do with what we're talking about. And this is it's lesson 312, and it's on page 456. And the title is lesson 312, page 456 in the workbook. The title is, I see all things as I would have them be. And that's true from the ego point of view, and that's also true from the Holy Spirit's point of view. So he's not making a spiritual statement here. He's just stating a fact. When I choose one of two teachers internally in my mind, I'm going to see things as I want them to be. They're either going to reinforce separation and it's not my fault, or they're going to show me that the world isn't real and all this drama I'm making up is simply made up. And I'll look at that with the Holy Spirit and realize my brother's innocence and my innocence are still intact. So then I'll be seeing innocence as I want to see innocence. So we set the goal, we ask the teacher for help, and then we have that experience. It's just that when we ask the ego for help, we very quickly forgot that's what we did. And then we go and we blame our lack of peace on something external in the world. So he goes on through here, line 5. How surely, therefore, must the real world come to greet the holy sight of anyone who takes the Holy Spirit's purpose, who takes the Holy Spirit's hand, who's willing to see his brother as innocent. We're trying to let go of the resistance to doing that. We're willing to give the Holy Spirit a break here, hold his hand for a few moments, and be willing to see something else. Yes, like that. Dave's nodding his head, so that's good. So Lynn, you want to read the lesson and we'll get quiet for a minute?
Sure.
All right.
I see all things as I would have them be. Perception follows judgment. Having judged, we therefore see what we would look upon. For sight can merely serve to offer us what we would have. It is impossible to overlook what we would see and fail to see what we have chosen to behold. How surely, therefore, must the real world come to greet the holy sight of anyone who takes the Holy Spirit's purpose as his goal for seeing. And he cannot fail to look upon what Christ would have him see and share Christ's love for what he looks upon. I have no purpose today except to look upon a liberated world, set free from all the judgments I have made. Father, this is your will for me today, and therefore it must be my goal as well.
We'll get quiet for a few moments. I'll bring us back. And gently, gently come back. Lynn, any thoughts on that?
Wow. No, just that I see what I want to see. And what I'm seeing, if I want to know what I want, all I have to do is look at what I'm seeing, and that's what I want. It's sort of hard to accept that sometimes.
One of the things I wrote in today's post when I was getting the announcement out about this meeting was, the Course talks about the world a lot, and the Course talks about saving the world a lot. And it doesn't usually outright say this, but the reason the world needs to be saved is it needs to be saved from us. We're the ones that are condemning it. In that italics, paragraph 2, I have no purpose for today except to look upon a liberated world. Liberated from my judgments. That's what's condemning the world. That's what's keeping me stuck, keeping me believing the world is a terrible place to be, and blaming everything in the world for my lack of peace. So I'm liberating it from those judgments. I'm liberating it from projecting my own ego on the world. And I'm doing this with help, a lot of help from the Holy Spirit. But that's the gist of the whole process in the Course, is I'm saving the world from me and my ego, not from any horrible coronavirus or political bad guys or whoever it is or whatever it is I think is robbing the world of its peace. I'm just saving the world from my own judgment. And it's my own judgment that's keeping me stuck in a place of resistance, because I don't want to let it go. I don't want to liberate the world. I want to keep blaming it so I don't take a responsibility and realize how silly hanging on to separation is. It's a lot of work, but I mean, that's the gist of it. It's why we do what we do.
I think there's a point where I see in any given situation where it's to my advantage to free the world and free my brother. As long as there's no advantage to me in that, and there is no advantage to me in that, as long as I feel that the only way I'm safe is to have enemies, because I can point the finger at them and I can say they're the guilty one and they're the ones that should be punished and not me, as long as that seems to be an advantage to me to do that. But at some point, I think we become very aware of the pain of wanting the other guy to suffer, you know, wanting him to go down, and realizing that his gain is my gain. If I free him, I free myself, that we go together, the idea of shared interest. But until the idea of shared interest kicks in, we're not going to go up that ladder. We're going to stay on the bottom rungs, because going up the ladder, the first step up the ladder is realizing my interest and my brother's interest is the same, and I want us both to be free. But as long as, you know, we want to be free at the expense of our brother. We're not really free, but we want to pretend that by blaming him, we're free. Then there's no advantage at all for me to free him. But when I start to learn the value of shared interests and being free together, then we start really going up the ladder.
So one way to look at it is that we have basically two shared interests. We have the shared interests of the ego, meaning we both, if we're both in ego mode, we believe in separation and we're trying to blame each other for our lack of peace. And we have the shared interests of the Holy Spirit, meaning as one son of God, we really don't want to do this anymore. And it would be nice to let it go. So we share that same interest. So we share the same pain of choosing the ego as our teacher, if that's what we're doing, and we share the same way out. Those are always the two shared interests. In the world, it could take on common things. I mean, it could be a chess game. It could be working together. It could be having a meal together. It could be all kinds of things. But whatever we're doing in the world is simply going to reflect in any given moment one of those two choices of teachers, one of those two choices of thought systems, one of those two shared interests. It's either going to reflect the shared interest of the ego, and I'm going to blame you, or it's going to reflect the shared interest that we have of the Holy Spirit that can show us another way of looking at everything, i.e. the real world, i.e. look at the world and realize it's not real. Especially, you're not the reason I'm upset. That's what's not real. We don't go around saying the world's not real, the world's not real. I mean, we will eventually believe that. But first we start with, what if my brother isn't the reason I'm upset? What if his innocence is still intact in spite of the terrible thing he just did or didn't do? And would I be willing to look at that? Am I willing to see my brother as sinless is the question, not am I willing to see him as not real? Because he's very real to me. And worse, I know he's the reason, when I'm in ego mode, I know he's the reason I'm upset. So we're trying to look at that as a possibility. What if I'm not upset for the reason I think? Even though I'm absolutely sure it's my brother that robbed me of my peace. What if that's not true? What if it's this internal thing going on where I've, for lack of a better phrase, thrown Jesus out the window and now I'm blaming my lack of peace on you? You're the one that made me throw him out the window. But I'll never admit that, but that's what I really believe. I can't be a nice guy because look what you did. I have to judge you or otherwise I'm going to get hurt again. So it's a repeating cycle of anger justifying judgment, judgment justifying anger, and on and on and on. Ad nauseum, ad infinitum, until we step out of that cycle and we're willing to look at the possibility that maybe I'm not upset for the reason I think. So in looking at these lessons, these review lessons, and we'll go back to, right now we'll go back to lesson 53 on page 86 in the workbook. In looking at these review lessons, if you haven't noticed it yet, there's some interesting things going on, just in terms of form. In all the review lessons, they're all written in first person singular, meaning the word I is the prevalent pronoun or noun in every sentence. It is I. My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. I am upset because I see a meaningless world. And throughout the whole lesson, it's always in first person I, meaning I'm owning this. I'm looking at this now. I'm realizing what's really going on. And all the other, the 50 lessons up to this, there were a few I's in there, but not like this. This is all I stuff. This is all owning that this is what's really going on. And then, so the first 50 lessons set up the metaphysics of the course. And then these 10 review lessons really bring them all to kind of a very succinct awareness of what they're all really saying in a really kind of consistent, expanding way through these 10 review lessons. And then he starts this pattern of having 20 regular lessons And then he'll have 10 review lessons again. And then he'll have another 20 lessons. And then he'll have 10 review lessons again. And that continues all the way up through about lesson 200. And what happens is, and what I think he's doing here is, in the first 50 lessons, he set down the metaphysics. And then in this upcoming next 20 lessons, he's really going to look at forgiveness and what it means. And then he's going to review that for 10 lessons. And then in the next 20 lessons after that, you'll see that he talks about miracles a lot. What a miracle is, what a miracle isn't, how miracles are like relieving us of all of our grievances. So each set of 20 lessons has a major theme, and then that theme gets reviewed in the following 10 lessons in first person. That's just a little bit of the form that Jesus, I mean, I didn't realize all that stuff until I kind of sat back and actually counted and looked at it. Oh, this is what he's doing. This is what he's repeating. But it's kind of interesting just to see, especially I think the first person part, that this review, all these reviews, every 20 lessons, he's really trying to get us to own what's going on. And okay, so in these 10 review lessons, the real world, there's a couple of themes that really get developed and really brought out actually. And one of them is this idea of the real world, moving from the world we think we see to an experience of something else, meaning really realizing the world we think we see isn't real. And Jesus calls that experience the real world. And the first time he uses that phrase in the workbook is in this lesson 53. So Carol, you feel like reading? Oh, sure. There you go. Read that first paragraph, please, in lesson 53.
My meaningless thoughts are showing me a meaningless world. Since the thoughts of which I am aware do not mean anything, the world that pictures them can have no meaning. What is producing this world is insane, and so is what it produces. Reality is not insane, and I have real thoughts as well as insane ones. I can therefore see a real world if I look to my real thoughts as my guide for seeing.
So how's your day been, Carol? You had any unreal thoughts today? Or better, have you had any real ones?
I think I did.
Oh, good. All right.
I took a lift today, and a lift car.
Yeah.
To an appointment, and I just had a great time with both drivers. And it was, I felt like it was in a sense of joining, and
Very cool.
my appointment was good, and
You must have been all prayed up before you went out the door.
oh heavens, I have no idea, but it was good. It was good. It was loving.
Very good. Yay. That's nice when that happens.
Yes.
Very good. And I think that's the kind of experience he's trying to get us to have. That's the real world experience. I mean, you were going to take the lift, whether it was a good day ego-wise or a bad day ego-wise.
Mm.
But I mean, and 99% of what we're going to do. It's really not about the specifics. It's just about, am I willing to do what I'm doing throughout a day with the Holy Spirit instead of trying to find bad guys? If I'm not in my right mind when I'm doing anything, whether it's riding with a Lyft driver or whatever it is, I'm on some not so subtle way, I'm going to make him the bad guy. Or I'll be thinking about somebody else who is the bad guy. I won't even be able to enjoy our joining in that moment that's reflected in this ride that we're sharing together. So yeah, very good. Thanks. Very good. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Lucian, have you heard all this kind of stuff before, the way we're kind of presenting it, or is this new, or how's it going?
Yeah, Tim, I listen to your classes quite a bit, sometimes on YouTube and also Bruce's discussions with Dr. Bob, and
All
you
right.
know, so yeah.
All right. Very good. You got anything to say, Bruce?
Great, thank you. I just had another conversation with Bob today. His latest book is really good, and I read about 50 pages of it and was just scratching the surface of all the good stuff in it. So,
All right.
yeah, between what Tim and Lynn are doing, and Bob, and a handful of others, we got plenty of great work to work with, huh? Yeah.
Can you imagine in the old days, like 20 years ago, we didn't have any access to resources like this? I mean, it was hard to find one course meeting, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere in Montana, like I was. Good luck finding any kind of meeting that makes sense. So yeah, now it doesn't matter where you're at. You can just do it. That's cool. Very good. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Lucian. Judy, you want to read paragraph 2? More about the world.
I am upset. I'm upset because I see a meaningless world. Insane thoughts are upsetting. They produce a world in which there is no order anywhere. Only chaos rules a world that represents chaotic thinking, and chaos has no laws. I cannot live in peace in such a world. I am grateful that this world is not real, and that I need not see it at all unless I choose to value it. I do not choose to value what is totally insane and has no meaning.
Any thoughts, Judy?
Well, amen to that. The world is seeming, I know when I'm seeing the insane world, and I'm seeing it, I'm still seeing it a lot. It's just a matter of when I'm upset about it, realizing I don't have to be upset about this, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, the nice thing about the course is we begin to realize there's a way out of the seeming insanity, the seeming chaos, whether it's external chaos, but mostly it's the chaos in my head. But
Yeah.
there's a way out of that both chaoses.
Yeah. Yeah. It's muddled in there some days. It's really muddled.
He kind of lies here. Well, he kind of contradicts himself. He says in line 4 at the end of this sentence, chaos has no laws. Well, hell, he spent a whole chapter 23 telling us what the laws of chaos were. And they're bad. I mean, they're really bad. Ken said that's the worst chapter in the course. He went over it one time. He's never going over it again. Well, maybe next lifetime he will, but.
Maybe meant to say chaos has no real laws.
Yeah, and that's the gist. There are no real laws. But he really spells out what we think the laws are without admitting what those laws are. And there's some pretty nasty laws, to say the least. And that's why we're so crazy. We actually believe those laws and then pretend we don't. So, getting to that chapter 23 takes a while. You don't have to rush it. If you never want to read it, that's fine. You got a few more lifetimes before you have to get to chapter 23. It's a rough chapter. So they're waiting when you're ready.
The good thing about the laws of chaos is that unavoidably we're going to come to a place of pain when we use that that thought system. So the pain is going to bring us to a place where we're more willing to surrender.
I thought you were going to say where we yell uncle.
Same thing. Same thing.
Uncle. Uncle, anybody for an uncle? Yeah, really. Dave, you want to read the next paragraph then, since you're ready to yell uncle?
Okay, sure. A meaningless world engenders fear. A totally, let's see, I'm reading the right one, right?
I hope so.
Yeah, okay. Okay. The totally insane engenders fear because it is completely undependable and offers no grounds for trust. Nothing in madness is dependable. It holds out no safety and no hope. but such a world is not real. I have given it the illusion of reality and have suffered from my belief in it. Now I choose to withdraw this belief and place my trust in reality. In choosing this, I will escape all the effects of the world of fear because I am acknowledging that it does not exist.
Any comments about any of that?
That's kind of the process that we all go through is the more we use the ego thought system, the more pain and chaos and lack of trust we feel. And I think it just brings us almost naturally to that, well, maybe naturally isn't the right word, but it brings us to that place where we're willing to withdraw our belief and place our trust in reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And have suffered from my belief in it. That's just what you were saying. Yeah. Very good. All right. That was your paragraph. You just jumped the gun. That was
I guess I did.
Very good. Thanks. Abby, you want to read 4? Let me see if there you go.
I don't have my book with me. I just have the text.
Oh, you don't have the book memorized yet? Damn.
No, I don't.
All right. Chris, you want to read that for Abby?
Sure. God did not create a meaningless world. How can a meaningless world exist if God did not create it? He is a source for all meaning, and everything that is real is in his mind. It is in my mind too, because he created it with me. Why should I continue to suffer from the effects of my own insane thoughts when the perfection of creation is my home? Let me remember the power of my decision and recognition where I really abide.
Any thoughts, Chris or Abby? Uh-oh. Somebody's yelling. Who's yelling? Does anybody claim that? Who knows?
It's probably my kids.
Oh, okay.
Said, here he comes, so it was perfect.
That's good. All right. Anyway, any thoughts about that? Any insane thoughts or real thoughts?
I thought it was interesting that it said that, I remember when I read this, whatever, a few days ago, it said, it is in my mind too, because he created it with me. I remember thinking like how significant that is. It didn't say he created it or he created it with me. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of brushed over that one. What do you think that means? You're part of the deal?
Apparently.
It's good.
I grew up so Christian, God is up there, and I think we still have the reminiscences of that a lot. So when it said that, I was like, really?
He needs me.
I don't know if I thought that, but
Right. He couldn't have done it without you. Huh. That's good. A lot of mention of suffering. As long as we're hanging on to the insanity, as long as we're hanging on to the world as we see it, there's obviously a lot of chaos, a lot of chaotic thinking, a lot of chaotic suffering, and no rhyme or reason for it. It just seems like, like the parking lot thing. It just comes out of nowhere, and suddenly I'm seemingly upset. But we're not aware of this constant choice to either choose one or the other of two internal teachers. If I'm choosing the ego, I'll have parking lot incidents all the time because I'm looking for them. Or if I'm choosing the Holy Spirit, I'll still have the parking lot incidents. I just won't get crazy about it. It won't be such a big deal. And here he's talking about, in an indirect way in line 6, let me remember the power of my decision, which certainly on our chart we call that part of us that decides between the ego and the Holy Spirit. in any given moment. We call that the decision maker. Ken Wapnick does. But that's where the power of our decision lies, in this choice between one of two teachers. And then that choice gets projected onto the world. And I'll either seemingly have a peaceful experience in the world, like Carol was talking about with the Lyft drivers, or I'll have a very not very pleasant experience in the world if I'm choosing ego. And that's always the case. I'm never upset for the reason I think, if I'm upset. And usually if I'm happy for genuinely happy, genuine in some state of peace. There's a real awareness of the Holy Spirit's presence. There's a real awareness of Jesus helping me see the other guy the way he is. I might not define it that way, but that's the experience I'll have. It'll be a peaceful experience. And a sense of connection, and a sense of joining. So yeah, very good. Damiana, you want to read paragraph 5?
Sure. My thoughts are images that I have made. Whatever I see reflects my thoughts. It is my thoughts that tell me where I am and what I am. The fact that I see a world in which there is suffering and loss and death shows me that I am seeing only the representation of my insane thoughts, and am not allowing my real thoughts to cast their beneficent light on what I see. Yet God's way is sure. The images I have made cannot prevail against him, because it is not my will that they do so. My will is his, and I will place no other gods before him.
Mm. What other gods do you think he's talking about?
I don't know, the ego, the anger, all these separated emotions. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. You know, I mean, we don't usually think of anger and separation and sin, guilt, and fear as idols, as gods. But basically, our very seeming separated existence is based on believing in those other gods. The God of sickness, the God of separation, the God of death. Yeah. So it's, what commandment's that? Does anybody open their Bible? I'll place no other gods before me. Is that like first or second commandment? I think it's the second, but I'm not sure. Is second? Yeah, it's one of them. It's a big one. It's one of the first two, I think.
What about the Hindus? They have like a million of them, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, when Kishore is on, we'll ask him about that, because yeah, he's real familiar with all the Hindu gods. So what happens in these review lessons is, I mean, he's mentioned the world, he's mentioned saving the world, but what he's really like coming out with, especially in this lesson 53, he mentions the world 15 times in this alone, in this lesson 53. Probably the review lesson of these 10 lessons that has the most mention of the world, but the gist is we're moving from an awareness of the world we see with all the pain and suffering to being willing to look at that very same world the way Jesus sees it. And in that way, we let go of the pain and suffering. So he's really like hammering out that transition from the ego's world to the world of the Holy Spirit in these 10 lessons in a way that he didn't do in the prior lessons. I mean, it's almost like the major theme going through these 10 review lessons. And it's over and over and over again. And you can see in these 5 paragraphs the theme of the suffering that we hang on to because we believe in the chaos of the world we think we see, of the need for enemies, of the need to be angry and have justified anger. I mean, it's like, really, do you really want that? Do you really want that suffering? Well, no, not really. Are we willing to let it go? Am I willing to try something else? Am I willing to try another teacher? So, and he continues that theme of this whole looking at the world and realizing what I think I'm seeing at any given moment if the ego is my teacher. And lesson 54, we're on page 88. Lucian, you got a book? You want to read paragraph 1?
You know, Tim, I don't have my book open. I didn't realize I would actually be joining in the meeting tonight. I thought I was. I didn't know how this worked. I just thought I would be watching.
It's going in and out.
My signal's going in and out.
I think so. It's going up and down, and we can't hear you. It's like slurring. It's like slurring words.
Am I slurring to other people? No, it's you.
No.
Never mind.
I'm not guilty for a change.
Lynn,
Ken, drinking.
Lynn is projecting again, huh?
Okay, Lucian and Abby made a pact before they came to the meeting. They just weren't going to read any damn book. That's all. That's all right. I like resistance. No, it's okay. At least I'm not fading in and out like I was charged with. So good. I'll read it. Paragraph 1 on page 88. I have no neutral thoughts. Neutral thoughts are impossible because all thoughts have power. They will either make a false world. It's an interesting phrase, false world compared to a quote unquote real world. They'll make a false world or lead me to the real one, the real world. But thoughts cannot be without effects. As the world I see arises from my thinking errors, so will the real world rise before my eyes as I let my errors be corrected. One of the interesting little 3-letter words that once you see it and you begin to realize how often Jesus uses it is let. We don't do this. We let Jesus do it for us. We let Jesus show us something else. We let the Holy Spirit in. We let go of the ego as our teacher, and we let the Holy Spirit show us the real world. So that let is in there a lot. Before my eyes as I let my errors be corrected. My thoughts cannot be neither true nor false. They must be one. My thoughts cannot be neither true nor false. They must be one or the other. I mean, you can't have something half true and half false, I think, is what he's saying there. They're either ego thoughts or they're Holy Spirit thoughts, no matter what I think they are. And what I see shows me which they are. Meaning, if I'm seeing chaos, and more importantly, if I'm reacting to chaos, and I think it's robbing me of my peace, that'll show me my ego is my teacher. Instead, and from A Course's point of view, that'll give me an opportunity to actually pray about it, ask Jesus for help, and let it go, and have a different experience. Bruce, you want to read paragraph 2?
Sure. Before I just had a comment. You mentioning how much the word world is emphasized in these reviews, and I was thinking that one of the phrases that is kind of get you between the eyes is, "There is no world. This is the central thought the Course attempts to teach." And I was thinking, well, a qualifier would actually be, "There is no false world. This is the central thought the Course attempts to teach."
Mm-hmm.
But because we're so preoccupied with the false world, for all intents and purposes, we can leave off the word false for most of us most of the time, I think. Anyway, it just kind of crossed my mind that it might be helpful. But it really is hopeful that there is a real world, not the way we're used to thinking of a world, but anyway.
Yeah, and one way to look at the false world is always false. We just don't know it's false.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the world's always made up. We just don't believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's good.
Okay.
Oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say how this lesson, like, it's so stuck in my head because it made me realize when you say we make choices, like we truly make choices. We make choices every day, a few times a day. We make choices every time we think. I could not forget this lesson. It was like it changed my life in a sense.
24/7, 365, every second, every nanosecond. Yeah. really.
Even while you're dreaming at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
You don't get a break there either. Really. All right.
I see no neutral things. What I see witnesses to what I think. If I did not think, I would not exist, because life is thought. Hence your t-shirt, Tim. Right. Let me look on the world I see as the representation of my own state of mind. I know that my state of mind can change, and so I also know the world I see can change as well.
Yeah.
So there's our decision-making fulcrum, pivoting 24/7, one or the other.
Yeah. Very
We always
good.
have that choice, huh? Yeah.
And Lynn, I was going to suggest that you leave the meeting and come back and see if that makes a difference in terms of your sound fluctuating. Sometimes that works. All right. Come back, though. You got to come back. Don't run away. All right. Where are we? Oh yeah, 1 and 2 are good. Let's go to the next lesson, lesson 55. And we're in paragraph 2. And Judy, you want to read that one?
Sure. What I see is a form of vengeance. The world I see is hardly the representation of loving thoughts. It is a picture of attack on everything by everything. It is anything but a reflection of the love of God and the love of his Son. It is my own attack thoughts that give rise to this picture. My loving thoughts will save me from this perception of the world and give me the peace God intended me to have.
Anything about that?
Well, Jesus, I hope you keep your promises, Guy. And a funny story, I have these little stickers, and over my mirror, there's who am I? And then in the bathroom, which is separate, there's a little sticker saying, what am I? And this has got my husband really intrigued, I must say. So
Does he expect you to answer it, or is there an answer, or?
he knows better than to expect me to answer it. But he sort of looks at me with one eyebrow up like, what is happening to this woman I married? Anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking, and this is kind of relevant to what you were just saying. One of the things we can do is, to make this a little bit more personal, is we can take out the word world and put us in there. Like the Tim I think I see is a form of vengeance. If I'm identified with this Tim, it's a form of vengeance. The Tim I see is hardly the representation of loving thoughts. It gets real personal then.
That's really great. Yeah.
Tim is a picture of attack on everything by everything. Oh, that's great.
So there is no Tim. This is the central thought the course attempts to teach.
Exactly. It goes on. Tim is anything but a reflection of the love of God and the love of his Son. Tim is my own attack thoughts that give rise to this picture of Tim. My loving thoughts will save me from this perception of myself. Oh, well, that may be a good thing. Could be a good thing. And give me the peace God intended the real me to have. So, yeah, I mean, it's just like you're kind of stepping down into what's really happening here.
Yeah.
I mean, the world is just, the world's the world, but when it comes to me now, what I see is a form of vengeance, including what I see in the mirror. That who am I? What am I? Well, I'm a form of vengeance, for God's sake, if I'm in my ego mode.
Yep.
Well, the good thing is I'm not either if I'm not in my ego mode, but then I'll know what I'm looking at in the mirror ain't me anyway. So, there's a bigger collective us going on. So, yeah. You have any good experiences today, Abby, you want to share? Any good lift
Well-
rides or anything?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We got a ride, little shuttle ride from the rental car place over to another location, and the guy, who was a very nice guy, very talkative, he said, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "Yeah." "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" I said, "Absolutely."
Wow.
He said, "What denomination?" So I thought,
Ooh.
I had to think, because it's French English, and I thought, what would I couldn't, I have to come up with something that he would understand, that would make sense to him. And I said, well, Methodist. He liked that a lot. I passed his test.
Oh, good. Very good.
Yeah, it was really nice, because he says, you have to be a Christian because you're so happy. I said, who wouldn't be happy here?
Wow.
So
Was
he was very
Karen
nice.
Karen in the car with you?
No, Rosemary was with me.
Oh, was she trying to answer it too, or was
She couldn't
letting you-
hear him. She wasn't
Oh,
close enough to
got
be
it.
able to hear what he was saying,
Right.
in the car.
Yeah, sure.
So it was cute. It was
Very
it
good.
was nice. It's nice to get a compliment like that, and he was happy with everything I said. So
I was thinking I think it was in a recent meeting where we realized we were all course Methodists. We were all trying to do the method of the course. So we were all Methodists that way.
Yeah.
There's a method to Jesus's madness.
right. I like that.
Yeah, very good. All right. Let's see, paragraph 5 on the next page, 91. I do not know what anything is for. And of course, this is all about, I don't know what the purpose of anything is if I'm in ego mode. So to me, to this individual identified separated self, the purpose of everything is to prove that my illusions about myself are real, that I exist, that it's your fault I'm not at peace, and it has nothing to do with me. All those are the illusions I have about myself. And it is for this purpose that I attempt to use everyone and everything to prove who the bad guy is, to prove who's robbing me of my peace, and to prove that I'm this separate thing that's vulnerable to these attacks. So that's the ego's answer to who is this, or who am I, or what am I? And it is for this purpose that I believe the world is for. Therefore, I do not recognize its real purpose, the purpose of the Holy Spirit, to see a world and know it's false, to see a world and know it's not real. The purpose I've given the world has led to a frightening picture of it. Let me open my mind to the world's real purpose by withdrawing the one I have given it and learning the truth about it. Early on in the text, Jesus points out that the one question we really need to ask about anything is what's it for? And not just what's it for from, a worldly point of view, but what's it for from a mind's point of view? Is this going to reinforce separation and my belief in separation? And more importantly, I know who the bad guy is? Or is this going to reinforce that I'm willing to have the Holy Spirit show me a different perception of the world? That the Son of God is still innocent, and all of these images of pain and suffering are all just simply made up. And it's not who and what we truly are. So we're kind of trading purposes here in any given moment. What's it for? From the mind's point of view. Is it the ego's purpose or the Holy Spirit's purpose? And lesson 56. Above all else, I want to see. Recognizing that what I see in the world, in the mirror in the morning, reflects what I think I am. I realize that vision is my greatest need. That's one of those needs we all share. We need and share the need. We share the need for vision, the Holy Spirit's perception. The world I see when I'm identified with my ego, the world I see attests to the fearful nature of the self-image I have made. I see a vulnerable self. I see a self disconnected from God. I see a self lacking power. I see a self in chaos. If I would remember who I truly am, it is essential that I let L-E-T, I let this image of myself go. First, we got to be willing to let it go. Let go of believing that we know the reason we're upset. As it is replaced by truth, vision will surely be given me. And with this vision, I will look upon the world and on myself with charity and love instead of condemnation, instead of looking for enemies, instead of believing I know who the bad guy is. So, I mean, this is really the 3 steps of forgiveness. I recognize that the picture of the world that I'm seeing, the picture I see in the mirror in the morning is an outer reflection of what I think I am, is an outer reflection of who is robbing me of my peace. And so if that's not true, am I willing to see something else? So that's really step 1 in forgiveness. I admit I'm upset. I admit the possibility that maybe I don't know why I'm really upset. I admit I'm resistant. I admit maybe I don't know why I'm resistant. And then I'm willing to let Jesus show me that maybe my brother isn't the bad guy. And ultimately, step 2, he'll show me I'm not the bad guy either. Not just me as stick figure in the world, but this internal me that's chosen separation. He'll show me all that's made up. The ego's made up and the world I see is made up because it's the projection of the ego. We'll still see it. It's not going to disappear. We're not going to go poof, but we don't have to take it so seriously. Paragraph 3. Carol, you want to read 3? This is for your Lyft driver.
They were both great. They were just wonderful. Above all else, I want to see differently. The world I see holds my fearful self-image in place and guarantees its continuance. While I see the world as it is now, truth cannot enter my awareness. I would let the door behind this world be opened for me, that I may look past it to the world that reflects the love of God.
Anything about that?
I just want to do that. I want to see things differently. While I was on my ride to downtown LA, I passed a lot of homeless encampments. But it was interesting because I was kind of watching myself and I looked at them and I thought it was a shame, but it was like, it wasn't disturbing. I didn't have an emotional reaction to it like I usually do. And I thought that was interesting because I was just watching myself do that. And I like that. I think that's good because I see a lot of homeless encampments and I do what I can and let it go.
I was thinking that, from their point of view, that is their home. From our point of view, if we're not living in a tent or sleeping on a sidewalk, I mean, we see them as homeless, and we kind of think that's chaotic. That's kind of insane. But I mean, what Jesus is saying, we're all homeless. We're all living in a tent we call the world, and we're all making it up.
Good.
So I think the original Urtext said, I would let the door behind this world be open for me, and I won't let it hit my butt on the way out. I think but they took that out. That was just too crass. But the gist of it is, there is a door that I can be willing to see past all these images of homelessness, others being homeless, others being responsible for my lack of peace, me being homeless, me being chaotic, me being insane, and I can see past that to something else if I'm willing to let the Holy Spirit show me something else. And that's always the case. And lesson 57, this is 57, where he just really, I mean, he's gotten into the world, but man, he's relentless with the world now, boy. I mean, I'm not the victim of the world I see. I've invented the world I see. There's another way of looking at this world I think I see. I could see peace in the world instead of this. My mind is part of God, so I am very holy, which means I could see a holy world. I could see holiness reflected in the world. So it's like bam, 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 bam. It's a real logical sequence of what happens when I face up to, I might not be a victim of the world I see. It might be an inner choice that where I've invented the world I see, so I don't take responsibility for that choice. And there's another way of looking at all this stuff. My ego choice for separation and the world that came out of that, there's another way of looking at all that. And that experience of looking at that and realizing it's not real and seeing through that door a window into the innocence that we all truly are, that we're all not homeless and that we're all not insane and that we all still are holy. I mean, that's where all this is always going and keeps repeating that over and over again. Because we're slippery. We try to find ways to be resistant without even admitting that what's going on. We're pretty clever, actually, at that. No, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody.
You mean I could climb out of this dumpster that I've formerly hired an interior decorator to try to spruce up? You mean?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Mine's wallpapered. I don't know about yours, but yeah, exactly. Lesson 60, I just want to quickly go over that because lesson 60 is the first real discussion on Jesus's part in the workbook of forgiveness. I mean, he had that earlier lesson, God is the love in which I forgive, but he just sort of mentioned that and then went off on love. He didn't really talk about forgiveness as a process, what forgiveness looks like, what do we have to forgive, how do we forgive? But the real first, this discussion of forgiveness, it's in every paragraph in lesson 60, this idea, this theme of forgiveness and what all that means. So first paragraph, line 4, forgiveness is the means by which I will recognize my innocence by being willing to see your innocence. So if I'm willing to step back from all my condemnation and my judgment of you, not only, the big payoff is not only will I get a sense of your innocence, and you're not responsible for my lack of peace, but I'll begin to get a sense of my own innocence too. And our innocence is actually joined. Our innocence is actually the same. And that's our true identity and not all these crazy stick figures running around. Paragraph 2, line 1, it's not my own strength through which I forgive. It's I let the Holy Spirit in. I let him show me I'm not upset for the reason I think. I let him show me I could see peace instead of this. So God is the strength in which I trust. The Holy Spirit is the strength in which I forgive. Let's see, paragraph 3, line 6. What could there be to fear in a world that I have forgiven, that I've stopped condemning, that I'm willing to see innocent and holy as a reflection of my own innocence, and that world that has forgiven me? I begin to get a sense that the world's not going to hold me in judgment of all the things that I've done to it. I mean, this judgment thing I know goes both ways. And if I can judge you, I know on some level you got to be judging me for judging you. And I believe all that's true. So, I mean, it really, once I begin letting go of judging you, the whole thing gets undermined. It's like pulling a strand on a rug and it all comes undone. So the first strand on the rug is I begin to be willing to see you past all of my judgments. I'm willing to see you as the Son of God in spite of what you did or didn't do. And that opens the door for all this other stuff to happen. And then, listen, there's not a moment, paragraph 4, there's not a moment in which God's voice ceases to call on my forgiveness to save, not the other guy, not the world, but to save me, because the world's simply a reflection of me. So, it's all self-enlightened interest here. We want to feel better. If seeing the other guy without judgment is going to help us feel better, well, let's give it a shot and see what happens. Why not? And then finally, as a closing, since I don't have Lynn, Dave, you want to read that last paragraph and we'll get quiet for a minute?
Sure. I am sustained by the love of God. As I listen to God's voice, I am sustained by his love. As I open my eyes, his love lights up the world for me to see. As I forgive, his love reminds me that his Son is sinless. And as I look upon the world with the vision he has given me, I remember that I am his son.
And we'll get quiet for a little bit. And gently go out and find nice Lyft drivers to give you Holy Spirit rides wherever you go. And everything else you do.
Hey, Tim, thanks for mentioning the word let. I've just been kind of meditating on that after you started saying that. I was thinking how this last lesson, sustained by the love of God, and it's just kind of like, it's such a release and a relief to let, and to relax into knowing that everything really is taken care of if we trust Holy Spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that step back, Loretta.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Jim, by the way, I was looking up those commandments, and it's the first one. Thou shalt place no other gods before me. You're right. I think you said it was number 2, but it's number 1. So it must be important.
Yeah, and the punishment for not doing that. Look what happened to those poor Israelites when Moses came down off the mountain. They just didn't die. The ground opened up and started like chewing them like Pac-Man.
40 years in the wilderness.
What's that?
40 years in the wilderness.
Yeah, it was bad news.
I thought it was just because Mel Brooks dropped one of the 3 tablets, and they didn't know what the other 5 were.
Well, there was that too, but
yeah, okay.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a great one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank
you, Tim.
Bye.